Hello students, welcome to biology class. This video is in continuity with the previous video of chapter Reproductive System. The objectives that we are covering in this video are the menstrual cycle, effect of fertilization, menarche and menopause. Starting with the menstrual cycle, also known as the ovarian cycle. The ovarian or the menstrual cycle involves number of cyclic changes that occur in the ovary and the uterus under the influence of FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone from anterior pituitary gland. The menstrual cycle begins at puberty at the age of 10 to 15 years and goes till the age of 45 to 55 years. In human beings, the cyclic changes occur with the periodicity of about 28 days, with ovulation occurring at about the middle of the cycle, that is, around the 14th day. During ovulation, an ovum matures and is released from the ovary. So, in this picture, we can see the menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle is divided into three phases. First one, menstruation. Second one, proliferative. Then on the 14th day, there is ovulation and then the secretory phase. Menstrual cycle bring changes in the ovary as well as in the uterus, and both ovarian hormones and pituitary hormones play an important role during the menstrual cycle. Now here we are discussing the various phases and the hormone action of the menstrual cycle. First one, the menstrual phase. It lasts for about 3 to 5 days and is marked by the breaking down of the mucous membrane and glands from the lining of uterus, endometrium. The epithelial lining, connective tissue and the blood vessels get slashed from the endometrium and are discharged as menstruation. Menstruation only occurs if the released ovum is not fertilized. Lack of menstruation may be the indicative of pregnancy. However, it may also be caused due to some other factors like stress, poor health, effect of some medicines, etc. At this time, the level of estrogen and progesterone are very low in the blood. In this image, we can notice the changes in the endometrium lining of the uterus. In the first phase of the menstrual cycle, that is menstruation, there is shedding of the endometrium lining. Next phase we are discussing is follicular or proliferative phase. It lasts for about 9 to 10 days from the 5th day to the 14th day, that is till ovulation. It begins with the repair of the damaged endometrium of the uterus through proliferation. It restores the continuous epithelial lining and repair the ruptured blood vessels in it. It is induced by the rising level of follicle stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary that causes maturation of the primary follicle into Graafian follicle. This reason, it is also called follicular phase. At birth, there are about 2 lakh to 4 lakh primary follicles in each ovary, but only one matures in each cycle. The changes in the ovary and uterus are induced by the change in the level of pituitary and ovarian hormones. The primary oocyte undergoes first meiotic division and gets changed to secondary oocyte. Secondary oocyte surrounded by the number of follicle cells together with the large fluid-filled cavity is called a mature Graafian follicle. In this image, we can see the changes that take place in the ovary. In ovary, the follicles develop into a mature follicle. In the ovary, primary follicle matures into a mature Graafian follicle. During this phase, the pituitary gland produces a hormone called follicle stimulating hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone helps in the development of primary follicle into secondary and then tertiary. At the end, there is mature Graafian follicle. 14th day, ovulation occurs, that is the release of egg from the ovary. As the ovarian follicle begin to develop, they secrete estrogen. Estrogen level increases gradually and reaches maximum about 3 days before ovulation. Estrogen causes thickening of the endometrium and it becomes richly supplied with blood vessels and endometrial glands. The thickness of the endometrium almost doubles to about 4 to 6 mm. The next phase is luteal or secretory phase. It lasts for about 12 to 14 days, from the 14th day to the 28th day. It is induced by the secretion of LH from anterior pituitary and so is also called luteal phase. LH along with the FSH stimulates the ovulation, that is the release of ova, secondary oocyte from the Graafian follicle. Ovulation is marked by the high concentration of both FSH and LH in blood and occurs around the middle of the cycle, that is 14th day. Both LH and FSH attain peak level during the middle of the cycle. Rapid secretion of LH leading to its maximum level during the middle cycle called LH surge. It induces rupture of Graafian follicle and thereby the release of ovum. The cells of the ruptured Graafian follicle form another structure called corpus luteum in ovary. Corpus luteum releases the hormone progesterone, which causes number of changes in the uterus. Progesterone is essential for maintenance of endometrium. In this image, we can see the level of pituitary hormones and the level of ovarian hormones during the menstrual cycle. When the level of estrogen is sufficiently high, it produces a sudden release of LH. This LH surge means peak, triggers a complex set of events within the follicles that result in the final maturation of the egg and follicular collapse with egg extrusion. Ovulation takes place. In addition to estrogen, now produces high amount of progesterone also, and which helps in preparing the lining of the uterus for implantation. The endometrium of uterus thickens for the implantation of blastocyst, the developing embryo. Under the influence of progesterone, the tubular glands secrete mucus and endometrium becomes fluid-filled and glandular. Progesterone affects the mammary glands also. The uterine movements decreases considerably. Progesterone also inhibits further maturation of any new follicle and ovulation from the ovary. Now in this image we can see all the changes that are taking place in the ovary as well as in the uterus, and also the level of pituitary hormones and also the level of ovarian hormones. Now as we can see in the menstruation cycle, there is shedding of the uterine lining. Now during the first phase of menstruation, the level of estrogen and progesterone are low. Now in the second phase, that is the follicular phase, that is a time between the menstruation and the ovulation, estrogen rises as an egg prepares to be released. And next phase, that is the proliferative phase. After this period, the uterine lining, the endometrium lining of the uterus builds back up again so that it is prepared for the implantation. Now on the 14th day, there will be the release of the egg from the ovary. Now here the estrogen level rises, which also induces the level of LH that causes the LH surge. Now high level of estrogen and high level of luteinizing hormone induces ovulation. Now the next phase, that is the luteal phase, the time between ovulation and before the start of the menstruation, when the body prepares for the possible pregnancy. Now in this phase, the progesterone produces and peaks and then again drops. Now progesterone is responsible for the thickening of the endometrium lining. In the last phase, that is also the secretory phase, the uterine lining produces chemicals that either help support an early pregnancy or will prepare the lining to break down and shed if the pregnancy does not occur. Now moving on to the next topic. Now in the process of ovulation, ovum is released. If the ovum is not fertilized, what will happen? If the ovum is not fertilized, the corpus luteum triggers its own degeneration. In the absence of fertilization, the rising level of progesterone inhibits the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone, which in turn inhibits the release of FSH and LH. This results in the generation of corpus luteum, and there is decreased level of both progesterone and estrogen. At about 28th day, as the progesterone level falls, the blood vessels constrict, preventing the blood supply to the endometrium, along with the diminished supply of oxygen and nutrients. All this leads to breakdown of the endometrium along with the blood vessels and is the beginning of the menstrual phase. As corpus luteum degenerates, it transforms into a white body called the corpus albicans. Consequently, the endometrium begins to break down and uterine contraction increases. Now, next question arises, if there is fertilization, if the ovum gets fertilized, then what will be the changes or what will happen? In case the ovum gets fertilized, the corpus luteum keeps growing and so the level of progesterone also increases. The lining of the endometrium thickens further and the menstrual cycle remains suspended during pregnancy. The blastocyst gets implanted in the uterus and brings about a number of other changes in the body. The implantation of ova occur in about 9 days after fertilization. Now moving on to the last topic, that is the menarche to menopause. This image shows the reproductive lifespan of a woman. Now here we will discuss these two important terms, menarche and menopause. Menarche, the beginning of menstruation at puberty, is termed as menarche. In other words, the first monthly period or menstruation is called menarche. It marks the beginning of reproductive life of a woman. It normally occurs between 11 to 13 years. Menopause. At about the age of 50 to 55 years, ovulation stops and the menstrual cycle is permanently discontinued. This is known as menopause. After menopause, the female loses the ability to reproduce. It also brings about a hormonal imbalance, decreased level of estrogen in the body, and hence is also accompanied by the other changes like the loss of bone matter, increased body weight, etc. So, I hope all these topics are clear to you all. Thank you.